At the end of the summer, I took a job at a Boardwalk arcade. I'd be working during the off-season, September to April. I figured it would be easy. The arcade was the only thing open year-round. Everything else, the amusement rides, the frozen yogurt place, the funhouse, would be shuttered and closed. As September rolled around and the chill crept in, one by one everything began to shut down. I watched them winterize the tiger-themed kitty roller coaster. I watched them cover Trevor the Train's big gray ugly face with a zippered tarp. A rolling metal door was pulled over the entrance to the funhouse. By late September, the place was a ghost town. The boardwalk was almost always empty, save for the lone bicyclist or runner. The ocean continued to beat against the empty beaches. A few kids would come into the arcade here and there, but it wasn't much. "Why don't we just close in the winter?" I asked the girl who worked with me, Abby. "This can't be profitable for the people who run this place." "I don't know," she replied, "but I'm not complaining." It was a sweet deal. Not only were we paid a full salary for doing very little all day, but we were also offered subsidized housing. There were 2 little loft apartments above the arcade, and while they weren't pretty, they were very cheap. Abby and I were living there until May 1st, when the boardwalk started shifting back into summer mode. I'm surprised they hired me, honestly. I told her, thinking of how many people would probably want to work here. My resume wasn't exactly stellar. "Yeah, me too, I don't even have references," she replied. Both of us had graduated high school recently with no concrete plans for college or beyond. I was hoping to save up some money here to afford classes at the local community college next year. My family, unfortunately, had no interest in helping fund my education. One night in late September, Abby asked me to close up alone. She wasn't feeling well, so she went up to her apartment around 7. It would be my first time closing up alone. I'm a tall guy, but I had to admit, even I felt a little creeped out closing up. We closed at 9 o'clock, but the last kids had left about 2 hours ago. It was just me and the neon glow of the various arcade games. My first job was to walk around the arcade and make sure that nobody was still in the building. So I locked the front doors, flipped the close sign, and then started my nightly patrol. I started down the aisle. Retro games flanked me: Pac-Man, Mortal Kombat, Mousetrap. Their screens were still on, all neon, jittering pixels. I continued towards the skee-ball machines and then the basketball games. At the back were some claw machines with lots of stuffies piled up. As I was walking past the claw machines, though, I heard something. It sounded like a little hiccup. I froze in place, wheeling around slowly. "Is someone here?" I called out. For a few seconds, there was silence, and then I heard it. Thumping, like rapid footsteps, like a kid running. "Hey," I called out. "It's okay." I wheeled around, looking in every direction, but I didn't see any movement. My heart started pounding. What if I couldn't find the kid? I took a deep breath in and then out. Relax, if you can't find them, you'll call the police and then they'll find them. But my night would be shot. It would take them a while to get here, and then they would have to find the kid, and then the parents, and then ask me for a statement. "Hey, come out here," I said, unable to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "I need to close up, okay? You don't want to be locked inside now, do you?" The lights shut off. You little, I thought, fuming. So the kid was playing games with me. Dim light streamed in from the boardwalk, which looked miles away from where I was at the back of the arcade. The neon lights of the consoles glowed, casting strange shadows across the place. I sucked in a deep breath. A rustling sound came from behind me. I whipped around just in time to see the stuffed animals in the claw machine shift. I looked down at the prize door and it was swinging. Oh no, did the kid climb in there? They could suffocate or something, and how was I supposed to get them out? I crouched by the prize door and lifted the flap. "Hey, come on, you gotta get out of there." I called in my nicest voice. Silence. I have candy, I sing-songed. Nothing. The teddy bear shifted again. There was a slight gap between a brown bear in a dress and a black bear in overalls. In it, I could just make out the glint of an eye. The kid was staring at me. You can choose any bear you want and take it home with you. I reached my hand up through the prize door. Here, take my hand, I'll get you out. As I crouched there though, the gears in my brain caught. This door is only big enough to fit like maybe a 2-year-old. Would a 2-year-old really have the skill to climb up in there? And they certainly wouldn't be playing games with me, turning out the lights and hiding. The teddy bear shifted. Something shot out and grabbed my wrist. My arm was pulled up into the machine. My shoulder hit the frame of the prize door with a crack. I yanked my arm back, but it was strong, like way too strong to be a kid. But the hand was small like a child's, small and pale in a vice grip. I grabbed the claw machine with my free hand and pushed wildly. Finally, I yanked my hand free. I stumbled to my feet and I backed away panting. I whirled around and sprinted towards the front of the arcade. The neon lights zoomed past me in the darkness. "Step up and score," said the booming voice of the basketball game. I forced myself faster, but my foot caught on something. I tripped and careened into the darkness. The floor hit me hard. I scrambled up, ignoring the pain, just in time to see a small shape dart behind the pinball machine. All I could make out was a pale, chubby hand. I jumped up, ran to the door, unlocked it, and ran out onto the boardwalk, gulping in lungfuls of the chilly and salty air. The harsh white glow of the safety lights poured down on me. In the distance across the sand, the dark ocean swirled and rolled. I looked up at the stars, barely visible in the glow of the lights. You saw them, didn't you? My entire body froze. I heard the soft thumps of footsteps behind me, felt their presence weighing down on me, but I didn't want to turn around. Something ingrained in my subconscious, honed with years and years of evolution and survival, it told me to keep my eyes on the ocean. Maybe it was the strange rolling rhythm of the voice, or the off-kilter limping footsteps, but my brain was screaming, "Don't turn around." "Yeah," I replied, my voice shaking. "Don't let them touch you," the voice said. And then I felt the invisible weight pressing down on me shift, and heard the limping footsteps fade to my right. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths of air. When I finally opened them and turned around, the boardwalk was empty. There was a tangle of dried seaweed in front of the arcade where I had guessed the thing had been standing. I hesitated for a second, staring into the darkness of the arcade, and then I called the police. They did a thorough search of the place. I watched their flashlight beams sweep over the dark aisles between the games. A few minutes later, the lights came back on. One of the officers came out to debrief me. He was a broad man with black hair and a mustache, a very stereotypical 80s macho man type. He looked right at home in a badge and uniform. "Oh, there are a lot of weird people who lurk around here off-season. Kids playing pranks, teenagers smoking and drinking. We try to keep an eye on it, but it happens." "Did you see anyone in there?" I asked. "Nope. Must have run off before we got here." I had had my eye on the door. There was no way they could have run off. "And you looked in the claw machines?" I asked. "As best we could." I told him about the man who had spoken to me, leaving out the supernatural elements. He waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, I've heard about some old guy who likes to say weird stuff to people. I wouldn't think much of it." He made it seem commonplace. In fact, the more questions I asked, the more annoyed he seemed, until he cut me off and said that he had to respond to another call. I ran into the arcade, up the stairs, and I locked myself in my apartment. I promised myself that I would never close up alone again. For the next week or two, everything went fine, until I heard some sounds coming from the amusement ride area. All of the rides, the kiddie roller coaster, the tilt-a-whirl, had been winterized and covered with tarps. The metal fencing around the area had been locked. But as I walked by, I heard a soft tapping sound from inside. I figured it was an animal, but as I glanced in, I saw the tarp covering Trevor the train move, as if something were underneath it. Oh, come on, another kid. I squinted. There was definitely something moving under the tarp. Not my problem, I thought, backing away. If an animal had gotten in there, that was their problem. I was only hired to watch the arcade. As I watched, though, the movement stopped, and then something dark began to drip out from under the tarp. I watched in utter horror as what appeared to be blood dripped out. It was right under where the face would be. I pictured the gray, demented-looking train face chomping down on some poor animal. I called the police, again. This time, they seemed really annoyed. One of the officers was the same one who had checked out the arcade, Mr. Macho. The other was a skinny, younger partner who scowled in disgust when he peeked under the tarp. Oh, it's a seagull, poor thing got trapped. At that, Mr. Macho crossed his arms and scowled at me. You can't keep calling us out here. I really thought that somebody was in danger both times. You're wasting our time. And with that, he turned on his heel and started back towards the car. But then the other officer approached me. This job is dangerous, he said in a low voice. What? Working here off-season, it really takes its toll mentally. A lot of people start getting paranoid, lonely, cabin fever type stuff. Oh, I'm not alone, I have Abby, I said, pointing back to the arcade. You get along with her? Yeah. Good, keep it that way. We wouldn't want another incident like '06. And with that, he started towards the patrol car. Wait, '06, I called out after him. Look it up, he called back. You'll see. He disappeared down the boardwalk. A minute later, I saw the patrol car zoom past on the main road. I was alone. The cool wind whipped in from the beach. The ocean was turbulent and gray, whitecaps extending into the horizon. I tore my eyes away and looked back at the pool of blood under Trevor the train. I shuddered. As soon as I got back inside, I looked up the incident of '06. There were only a few articles floating around on the internet, and they were all on obscure, outdated websites. I didn't know whether to trust them, but they all said the same thing. Two guys, Chase and Dermot, had taken a job at the Boardwalk for the off-season. It wasn't at the arcade, but the archery place that used to be here. They both were around my age, in their early 20s. Chase had stopped communicating with his girlfriend in early October. After not hearing from him for 4 days, she went to the police. They found Chase's partially decomposed body on the beach, with an arrow sticking out of his chest. Dermot was found sitting in a bench overlooking the ocean, malnourished and dehydrated, rocking back and forth. That wasn't him, that wasn't him, he kept repeating over and over. No one knew exactly what happened. Dermot got a lighter sentence on reason of insanity, but there was one disturbing detail that was mentioned in only one of the articles that nobody could seem to explain. Dermot's eyes had been gouged out. At that point, any sane person probably would have quit. A child tried to pull me into the claw machine, a child with the strength of an adult. I was supposed to believe a seagull randomly flew into the tarp covering the train and somehow died a bloody death. That made no sense either. And now there is apparently a gruesome murder here 20 years ago. I stayed for 2 reasons. This was the easiest job that I had ever had, and Abby wouldn't quit. I tried to convince her, but she hadn't seen any of the weird stuff for herself. She agreed the murder was terrifying, but it happened so long ago it didn't rattle her, and I wasn't going to leave her here to fend for herself. Okay, I'll admit it. I was starting to catch feelings for her too. I didn't know her that well, but she was cute and kind. She probably wasn't even open to dating. She confided in me that she was currently struggling with an eating disorder, but I at least wanted to be there for her as a friend. And so I stayed. And for a few days, things were fine. And then one rainy Wednesday morning, Abby and I found a note taped to the door of the arcade. It read, "Someone reported hearing noises from the funhouse. There may be an animal trapped in there. Can you go check it out? From David." And David was the guy who had hired us. Our boss, though we hadn't seen him since the training at the end of August. "Oh, hell no," Abby said. "It's not even our job," I replied. But as it turned out, it was our job. We came back from lunch to find another note taped in its place, outlining the fact that our job description included checking on the other Boardwalk attractions. David had taken the time to cut out a little piece from our employment contract and stick it to the note. He had also lovingly added, "It is your job, and employees who don't do their jobs will be fired." Both of us froze. "Is he listening to us?" I whispered. "I don't know," Abby whispered back. Did he have cameras and microphones all over the place? Was he watching us? Before I could think about it too hard, Abby started for the funhouse. "I need this job," she told me, as we made our way up the rain-soaked boardwalk. "I know," I replied, suddenly tired of her nonsense. I might just quit even if she didn't. I didn't sign up for this no matter what David said was in our contracts. The wavy red font reading Funhouse popped in the gray gloom. The spray-painted clown stared down at us with dead eyes. Abby pulled out the key, slid it into the lock, and pushed the retractable door aside. The funhouse was completely dark. The air smelled dusty and rotten. "What if the animal's rabid?" Abby whispered. "If it bites you, catch it, then you can get it tested." She raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm going to be able to catch a rabid animal in a funhouse?" "Look, it's probably just a squirrel." The gray light streamed in from behind us. I went behind the little ticket counter and felt for a light switch. With a mechanical whoom, black lights flicked on, along with some sort of machinery deeper in the house. We were staring at a mirror maze. "Oh, hell no," Abby said. "I hate these things." "Follow my lead then." I was trying to act all brave, but inside I was dying. They really wanted us to try to find an animal in here. Shouldn't we just call animal control? How about this? We look for 10 minutes and then we get out of here and tell them that we couldn't find it. She pushed out a breath. Okay. I stepped into the maze first. I stretched out my hand in front of me and slowly advanced to the left. There was a mirror in front of me and I saw Abby following a few paces behind, wringing her hands. Thunk. My hand hit glass. I sidestepped and then was facing another mirror. Abby was still behind me, her face lit blue from the black lights, looking dead pale. She opened her mouth and then shook her head and followed me silently. Left, right, straight. I focused on only moving forward, on sidestepping the mirrors and the panes of glass. I had been trying to keep a mental map of the maze in my head, but it quickly got way too complicated. I could see the exit to the maze only 4 or 5 feet ahead of us. We were almost there. There was another mirror directly ahead. I dodged around it, and then I stopped. I stared into the mirror. Abby was standing behind me, but she wasn't wringing her hands. She was smiling. I whipped around. The blaze behind me was empty. "Abby?" I called, my voice echoing. Abby! Relief flooded me when I spotted her a few paces back. She looked terrified, her face pressed up against the glass, skin blue from the lights. I carefully stepped left and then right, trying to retrace my steps through the maze. I was right on the other side now. It's gonna be okay, I told her, pressing my palms against the glass. It's going to be fine, okay? I looked left and then right. Both mirrors. I couldn't figure out how to actually get to her, but I was right here. Abby, you can hear me, right? We're going to be fine. And that's when I heard it. Tripping. I looked down. Underneath Abby, there was a puddle of something dark. I looked up at Abby and screamed. There was a dark line across her throat, blood dripping down her black shirt. In the low light, I hadn't even. She was dead. No, I mumbled, backing away. My back hit a pane of glass. Abby, please, you can't. Her head snapped up. Her eyes flew open and her lips curled up into a smile, bearing blood-stained teeth. She canted her head, looking at me. What the? I'm over here. I whipped around to see Abby at the exit to the maze, waving her hands wildly. That's not me. I screamed as a pane of glass thundered down from the ceiling. It locked into a groove in the floor, trapping me. I slammed my fists against it. It shook but didn't break. I felt my pockets, my phone. I took 3 steps back and then reached back to hurl it. It sailed through the air and thunked into the glass. A crack erupted. I could see Abby winding her way towards me. I pounded at the crack with my fists. It grew, spreading, and then the entire pane shattered. Seconds later, she grabbed my hand and tugged. I saw the maze in flashes, a dead Abby leaving bloody handprints as she pounded on the glass. The smiling Abby in the mirror slowly advancing on us, grinning wider and wider. More panes of glass thundered down. I burst into the darkness. We were out of the maze, but deeper in the funhouse. The lighting was dim. Black lights shone from somewhere above, making streamers glow sickly shades of puke green and radioactive orange. Up ahead, I heard that looping, recorded audio track of laughter. Abby grabbed my arm, her fingers squeezed tight. The dark hallway veered left, and then we were staring at an animatronic clown. The laugh track continued as the clown twisted its head back and forth. He was stirring a cauldron full of dark liquid. It made an awful squelching sound. Come on, I said, tugging Abby. The clown's eyes followed us as we were hurried towards the next room, which wasn't a mirror maze but filled with funhouse mirrors, the kind that distorted your reflection. I barely looked at them as I hurried past. It wasn't until I made it into the hallway with the shifting floor tiles that I realized Abby was no longer holding my hand. Shit. For a second, I wanted to keep going. Maybe she had slipped past me. Maybe she was safe on the boardwalk waiting for me. But of course, deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I turned around and sprinted back. Abby was kneeling on the floor of an octagonal room. She stared into one of the several funhouse mirrors hanging on the walls. Her face was blank, as if entranced. Abby? I whispered. She let out a soft whimper. I leaned down and took her hand. Hey, come on, let's go. I can't, she whispered. And then I saw what was in the mirror. It was her reflection, but just the slightest bit different. She looked like she had gained 5 or maybe 10 pounds. The difference was barely even noticeable, but to Abby, it was everything. That's me, she said. That's what I look like. She felt her own face, frantically patting her fingers on her cheeks. That's me. That's me. Abby, we really need to. I can't, it's me. She clawed at her cheeks. It's me, that's what I look like." I grabbed her hand and tried to tug her up, but then my eyes caught on my own reflection in the mirror. My face and body were as they should be. I looked exactly the same. My pale skin and dark hair, my thin frame and rumpled clothes, standing in the middle of the room. But then I noticed the people behind me. A woman with curly auburn hair, a man with close-cropped black hair. Both of them faced away from me. My parents. My heart sank to the floor. I tried not to look, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Even after everything, seeing them was like an instinctual pull, something primal, a thread attaching me to them. "You never cared about me," I growled to the mirror without even thinking. The one that looked like my mom slowly turned her head. She looked back at me, smiling, teeth glowing in the black lights. "Why would we?" she said in my mother's voice, but slightly raspier and deeper. "You were never going to amount to anything anyway." "You're going to end up like your brother," my father said with a half-hearted shrug. A soft thump made me turn away. I spun around to see the reflection, Abby crawling out of the mirror, hands splayed on the floor, hair hanging over her face. Her hand slowly reached up towards Abby's neck. "No!" I screamed. I grabbed her by the arm and pulled her away. "Come on!" I shouted, my voice raw. I had been crying too. We sprinted through the darkened hallways past another animatronic clown butchering something with a cleaver. We veered left into a tunnel and the floor tiles shifted beneath us, nearly throwing me off balance. Then we were at the exit, gasping in the cold air. Abby collapsed on a bench and sobbed. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling numb. "Come on," I said, when she had stopped crying. "Let's get out of here." She nodded. I helped her up and we started off. We hurried down the boardwalk, past the shuttered Midway games, the frozen yogurt stand. The stairs that led down to the beach came into view. And then music filled the air. One of the games up ahead was open. A zippered tarp had been pulled back. I could see the colorful piles of stuffed animals, a multicolored wheel spinning lazily, making a ticking sound against the spokes. I slowed down, reaching my arm out to shield Abby. We both stared. "That wasn't open this morning," Abby whispered. "Let's just go past. Don't look at it," I replied. "Just walk. Pretend you don't even notice it." We started down the boardwalk. As we got closer, I could see in my side eye that there was someone in the booth. A woman dressed in a tuxedo of sort. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of her, as the wheel spun and spun. As we started to pass it, I could see tears of mascara running down her face, and I could hear her whisper over the music. "They're all dead." My fingers tightened on Abby's arm as we tried to pass. Something collided with my chest, hard, and then I was standing in front of the booth. Abby was standing next to me. I tried to move, tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the ground. It felt like something invisible was holding me in place. "What the?" Abby's voice died in her throat. The woman in the booth reached out a hand towards the wheel. Her face was white, as if painted with white makeup, and her grin stretched all the way to her ears. Her eyes were popped wide open and she stared down at us, tracks of mascara bleeding down her cheeks. The prizes behind her were horrible perversions of normal stuffies, little characters with blood dripping down their faces, X's for eyes, grins full of razor-sharp teeth. She reached out and rested her hand on the wheel. It was bisected into 4 colors, red, yellow, green, blue. There was sharp, black text on each section. The red one said, "A painful death." The yellow one, "No escape." The green one, they're all dead. The blue one, lost at sea. I tried to run, but my entire body was paralyzed as the woman grabbed the wheel and spun. The ticking. Abby and I stared in horror as the wheel slowed. I held my breath as the ticker passed red and then yellow and then green and then blue. It slowed on red. A painful death. I bit my lip, all the blood rushing out of my head. The ticker landed on yellow. No escape. The woman bowed, and when she came up, I felt the invisible pressure release us. I could move again. I backed away. The woman grinned down at us. "Run," Abby whispered. We sprinted down the boardwalk. The drizzling rain felt ice cold like needles on my skin. My legs burned and ached. I gasped for air, but I focused on the end of the boardwalk just past the ice cream parlor. I took a final glance back. The woman from the booth was watching us but not following. We leapt down the stairs. Suddenly everything spun. I grabbed the banister as an intense feeling of vertigo hit me. The wood, the sand, the ocean all blurred together, like I was going 100 miles an hour. And then I was standing on the boardwalk. At the beginning of the boardwalk, next to Vivian's souvenir shop. I could see the amusement rides covered in dormant, and then the faint outline of the arcade, neon light flashing, and then the funhouse, fading into the gray, rainy gloom. "Did we just teleport?" Abby stuttered. I didn't want to say yes, that would sound crazy impossible, but the last thing I remembered was running down the stairs, and now we were here. I turned around and ran towards the end of the boardwalk on this side, right past the souvenir shop. I bounded down the steps, and yet again the world tilted on its axis. Everything spun like I had just gotten off the tilt-a-whirl. When the dust settled, I was standing at the other end, next to the ice cream shop again. I could see Abby in the distance, the tiniest dot. At least it seemed like the woman at the game booth wasn't keen on following us. I ran down the boardwalk, huffing and puffing. Halfway down, I veered for the little ramp labeled beach access. I hopped the closed gate and ran out into the sand, my feet sinking with every step. I ran towards the ocean until the ice-cold water was lapping at my feet and soaking my shoes. There were no boats and no signs of life out there. Just cold gray, slightly darker than the sky, fading out into oblivion. I ran left, but as soon as I was as far north as Vivian's souvenir shop, the vertigo hit and I was back at the end of the boardwalk. When I ran to the other end of the beach, the same thing happened. I collapsed onto the sand. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Even though I was able to call the police a few days ago, now every number I called went to the same message. "We're sorry, this number has been disconnected." I hung my head in my hands. 10 minutes later, Abby joined me. "I don't know what's happening," she sobbed. "I know," I muttered. I don't know how long we sat there in the cold, damp sand, staring out at the gray ocean, wondering what was going on. The sky darkened as the sun began its descent. Long shadows cast by the amusement rides crept onto the sand. Soon it would be dark. We went back to the arcade. I opened the storage closet and rummaged through everything. I found a hammer. I ran to the back corner of the arcade between the pinball machines and began swinging at it against the wall. Thud. "What are you doing?" Abby shouted. "If I break the wall," I panted, "maybe we can get out of here." But deep down I knew that it wouldn't work. Whatever was keeping us from leaving the boardwalk must be surrounding the place. Besides, 10 hits in the wall didn't even dent. I let out a groan of frustration and I dropped the hammer. But then I got another idea. "Come on," I said to Abby. We ran back out onto the boardwalk. now washed in the blue hues of dusk, and I pointed at the roof. Give me a boost. Oh, that's crazy. No, it's not. Maybe I can jump down on the other side. She shook her head but kneeled on the boardwalk with one knee up. I climbed and grabbed onto the roof. I tried to pull myself up. The cheap aluminum roof bit into my palms. I groaned and let go. I can't do it. I ran down the boardwalk over to the amusement rides. They were cordoned off from the rest of town by a stone wall. I frantically tried climbing it, my sneakers slipping against the bricks, but there were no footholds, no way to get any sort of purchase. I silently followed Abby back to the arcade. I pulled out my phone and tried to make another call. No service, no internet. I felt numb and hollow. Tired of running around in mental circles, I walked over to the Pac-Man machine and started to play. And then Mortal Kombat. The sky darkened to deep black. The stars twinkled overhead. The boardwalk looked completely different in the darkness. Lit by the bright white lampposts, it appeared to be floating in the darkness, disconnected from the beach, from the rest of the world. Just a strip of wood and metal suspended in space. And then I saw it. A light on the ocean. Abby, look. We ran out onto the boardwalk, down onto the beach. Hey, Abby screamed, her phone flashlight on, waving it around wildly. We're over here. Help, I shouted. SOS. The light wasn't that far from shore. It twinkled back at us, blaringly bright, almost blinding, and it looked like it was coming closer. The light steadily grew. It's coming for us, Abby shrieked. The light came closer and closer until it was blinding, like a miniature sun floating on the water, only 20 yards from us. It seemed to stop at that point, bobbing on the waves. The ice-cold water lapped at our feet. Do they want us to swim out to it? Abby asked. I don't know. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as the boat just sat there. No one called out to us. The light didn't blink to give some sort of signal. The light was so bright I couldn't see anyone or even the boat itself. And then I heard a sound. The soft sound of music coming from the boat. It sounded like a woman singing a lilting, beautiful melody. The light seemed to shimmer rainbow at the edges, and it was one of the most beautiful things that I had ever seen. Colors that I couldn't even begin to describe shimmered in the corona of the light. Without even realizing it, I was walking into the water. Don't get on the boat. It was that same voice, the one that I had heard after seeing the kids in the arcade. Soft and wavering and wet. That same presence weighed down on me, telling every instinct, don't turn around. Don't turn around, I shouted to Abby, but it was too late. She was staring behind us, her eyes were wide, her mouth hung open. She was frozen. I could only tell that she was alive because her head was trembling slightly, like she was tensing every muscle in her face and neck. Abby? She collapsed into a kneeling position, and then she began furiously raking her fingers through the sand. She pulled out a piece of broken shell and turned it over in her hands, brought it up to her face, and with a horrible scream, she began stabbing herself in the eye. No, I screamed. I grabbed her arm. It took all of my strength to restrain her. She screeched as she tried desperately to stab herself again. I couldn't bear to look, but I could see a thin trail of blood trickling down her cheek. Seawater. The voice burbled behind me. Submerge her in the water. Completely against my better judgment, I hoisted her up and dragged her into the water. She was still trying to stab herself, but more feebly now. I winced as the frozen water stabbed into my calves and my arms. And gritting my teeth, I forced her shoulders and then her face into the water. I felt like I was drowning her. but when I pulled her out seconds later, she was spluttering and crying. "It hurts," she sobbed, clutching me tightly in the water. "It hurts so bad." I stroked her hair. "It's okay now, everything's okay." "I'm so cold," she whimpered, shaking against me. And that's when I noticed it. The light on the boat was off. We were in total darkness. And did the boat leave? I whirled around. For a moment, I didn't see it. I smelled the stench of something rotting mixed with the salty scent of the ocean. And then I saw it. A void of black silhouetted against the stars. The boat was closer. Much closer. And it was larger than I thought. It rose at least 20 feet above the waves, blocking out the starlight. I helped Abby out of the water. "Keep your eyes on the ground," I muttered. "Don't look at it." The old man, or whatever it was beside us. It smelled like salt and sunburnt sand and rotting fish. Its breasts were crackly and wet, as if water half filled its lungs. "It's too late. They're coming." And then I heard it. A splash. It sounded like something had jumped into the water, and then splashing as many more followed it. "You can leave this place," the thing beside us said. "The gap between the funhouse and the game booth. It's the only exit." We hobbled up onto the boardwalk. The neon lights were blinding, and then we sprinted towards the funhouse. Seconds later, I heard the patter of footsteps behind us, many footsteps. We passed the creepy clown, the mirror maze peeking up from the entrance. I guided Abby to the crevice. It was only a foot, maybe 18 inches across. It didn't look like either of us would fit comfortably, and beyond it was total darkness. I helped Abby in. She contorted her body, the walls pressing in on her. "I can't fit," she said, her voice shaking. The footsteps thundered towards us. "You have to try," I whispered. "Come on." "No, I'm too big," she sobbed. "I can't." I reached out and pushed her shoulder. With that extra inch, there was a popping sound, and then in the blink of an eye, Abby disappeared. I crouched down and pulled myself in next. The last thing that I saw was a swarm of shadows on the boardwalk, flickering under the bright white safety lights, rippling with colors that I had never seen before in my life. And then I squeezed further in, and the vertigo hit me like a truck. When the world stopped spinning, I was standing in the parking lot of the boardwalk off Shore Avenue. Abby was standing next to me, bent over and catching her breath. The moon hung low, glowing a deep gold in the purple sky. Everything was silent. I looked back at the boardwalk. The buildings blocked a direct view, but I could see the lampposts, with their harsh white glow hovering in the darkness. We called the police, told everyone that we possibly could, and nobody believed us. The police even sent us photos that they had taken in their investigation to prove that everything was normal. And indeed, the photos showed that everything was covered and closed, including the funhouse and the Midway games. There was no trace of the horrors that we had seen. It's been a year since all of that happened. I've tried to post our story everywhere and warn people, but I don't think that I've been successful. The boardwalk is getting ready for fall again. The rides are covered and the beaches are closed, and the crowds are dwindling. The arcade is still open as it always is, and I've noticed 2 new employees. Abby and I tried to pull them aside and warn them, but the guy just laughed at me and the woman looked like she feared for her life. Both of them wrote me off as some weirdo lingering around the boardwalk. And then the police got involved, telling us that we were scaring people and we needed to leave. I wish I could have done more, but no one would believe us. And I have a horrible feeling that those new employees will go missing this fall. Susan Korndecki, Rain, Nelson Asada, Dice, Creamy and Me, Gasher, Talamagara, That One Woodsman, Sonic, GMD, Leon Knott, Takio Cirilla, Mina Lynn Kidder, SWAT, Damon McCory, Mark Norman, yours truly, Dino, Lunas TV, Wayward Son, Deus Ex Nihilo, Big Country Allen, Pamela Shockley, Sleepy Shroomy, Caleb Windsor, Kathy McGuire, Paige Martin, Richard Friends, Shrimple the Shrimp, MP Massacre 91, Jacob Bartlett, Miss Eldridge, Casey Long, Justin Photenauer, Role, Sanjay Anthem, Lone Wolf Sam,